All right. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all feeling fine and you're quite ready to take part in today's discussion of two orientations of to syllabus design, mainly product oriented versus product oriented. Okay. Uh, you see, we have so far clarified the distinction between curriculum and syllabus. We talked about the role of the teacher in syllabus design. We also talked about the point of departure or the basic orientations in syllabus design in our last session. Today, we want to see what differences there are between product oriented and process oriented syllabus design. And so, what different types of syllabuses can be categorized under each of these general categories. So, before we start the discussion of the product oriented and process oriented syllabuses, first of all, we need to clarify the distinction between two underpinning concepts called synthetic versus analytic approaches to language teaching. Let's see what you know about the synthetic approaches to syllabus to language teaching or synthetic language strategy. Yeah, hey, that I understand, quite understand your case. Don't worry. It's good that you have finally joined the class. Okay, Mona, go ahead, please.
Yes, doctor. There are many differences between analytic and synthetic syllabuses. Synthetic syllabuses emphasis on language. Different parts of language are taught separately and step by step, so that acquisition is a process of gradual accumulation of words until the whole structure of language has been built up. While analytic syllabuses, on the other hand, they are emphasis on different aspects of language, which may include structures or varying degrees of difficulty.
Thank you so much indeed, Mona. Yes, starting with the synthetic approaches to language teaching, they believe that language can be broken down into some separate components, pieces, bits of the language, and these separate components of the language can be taught separately in a step by step manner, focusing on one item at a time. These are the key features of the synthetic approach that you need to remember. Breaking language into some parts, teaching each of these parts separately in a step by step manner, and focusing on one item at a time until mastery over the whole structure, through accumulation of knowledge through these separate parts and constituents of the language. Eventually, they believe that the whole will be formed and students will be able to use this knowledge to express themselves and communicate with others. Yes, that these are the features of the synthetic approaches to language teaching. And as your friend mentioned, analytic approaches, on the other hand, uh, look at language has a more holistic view towards the language phenomenon, and believe that instead of breaking the language into parts, we need to present the learners with chunks of the language or wholes of the language to process and to find out exactly how it works. So, this is the main distinction between analytic and synthetic approaches to language teaching. You see, they are important because, to a great extent, these approaches to teaching or strategies to teaching have influenced some syllabuses of the time that were designed to teach the language. Mostly, people associate synthetic approaches with product oriented syllabus types, and they associate analytic approaches with the more process-oriented syllabus types. But we cannot say that a synthetic approach equates with a product-oriented syllabus, because a syllabus cannot be, even how, no matter how product oriented in nature, a syllabus can never be purely synthetic or purely analytic in nature. And there are some degrees of being synthetic, more or less synthetic and more or less analytic in different types of syllabuses that have emerged throughout the history of language teaching. So, this is an important point to remember. Now let's get to the distinction between product-oriented and process-oriented syllabuses. Starting with the product-oriented syllabuses first, I want you to tell me what features have been described or explained by David Noonan in this book that best describe uh, product-oriented syllabuses. What are the main or key features of these types of syllabuses, or this orientation to syllabus design?
Yes, doctor. Can I add something, doctor?
Sure, please go.
Yes, doctor. Product syllabuses focuses on the knowledge and skills which learners should gain as a result of instruction, whereas process syllabuses focus on the learning experiences themselves.
Absolutely correct. Very good. So, product oriented, as the name speaks for itself, focuses on the outcome or the end result of instruction, which is usually the skills, in the form of the skills and knowledge that we want our learners to take away from the instruction, from the course. Usually, these skills and the type of knowledge we expect our students to master and achieve as a result of instruction are closely related to the goals and objectives of the course. So we can say that a product-oriented syllabus focuses mainly on making sure that the goals and objectives of a course are achieved and students are uh, obtaining the skills and knowledge they need to have to show mastery over the content of the course. That is exactly the core of the product oriented syllabus types. Whereas in the process oriented syllabuses, we see that the focus is mostly on the process, or how the experiences that learners go through to discover, to learn, to find out how languages work in general around them, and what functions they serve in our lives. So they are basically different in a way, in their approach, as they don't that much pay attention to the end result of the instruction. Rather than looking at or having their eyes fixed on the end result, they want to see what happens in the way throughout the learning process. And that is the main distinction. Excellent, very good. So, product oriented syllabuses have some features of this synthetic approaches. How? Because they focus on, as you mentioned, skills and knowledge that students need to master for a particular course. And at the end of the day, they need to show mastery of those skills and knowledge. So, in what way product oriented is synthetic in its approach? Can you guess? No ideas? So you know the definition of the product oriented now. You know, you're familiar with the features of the synthetic approach to language teaching. Now I want you to find some similarities between the synthetic approaches and the product-oriented syllabus types. In what ways product-oriented syllabuses,
Yes, doctor.
yes, reflect the features of synthetic approach? Yes, please, Mona.
Yes, doctor. Product-oriented syllabuses also, we can say synthetic, the similarity between synthetic and the product, or we can consider synthetic syllabuses are product-oriented syllabuses, that is, which is specified as discrete lists of grammatical items, and in which the classroom focus is on the teaching of these items as separate and discrete.
Excellent. That's right, Mona. That's absolutely right. But it's not just limited to the grammatical items. Anything that is selected, any part of the language, it could be grammar, it could be lexical items, it could be the phonological aspects, it could be any part of the language. It could be the skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. When you separate all these elements of the language and teach them separately, you teach teaching, you teach reading separately from writing, you decide to have a course that focuses only on speaking without thinking about listening or other skills, then in all these ways, they are being synthetic that because they are separating the language elements and they are trying to teach them separately from other elements. And so definitely they would try to take this a step-by-step manner in teaching and presenting the elements separated. And what is the main concern of the syllabus designer in all these cases is they want to see what students take away with them from the course at the end of the day, at the end of the term, the end result of the instruction. So in that sense, a product-oriented syllabus is synthetic in its approach, right? Okay, now under the product-oriented syllabus, some subcategories are introduced. In this book, we only see two types of product-oriented syllabuses, mainly grammatical and functional notional syllabus. But I don't know whether you know any other syllabus types which are product oriented in nature and are not listed here, or the name does not appear in the book. Can you mention some of other types of product oriented syllabuses that were introduced into the field of language teaching and are not mentioned in this book? Are you familiar with any other product-oriented syllabuses? Can you mention some of them?
Yes. Yes, Dr. As we have studied with Dr. Hassan Talib in the previous semester, situational syllabuses, lexical syllabuses, also under product-oriented syllabuses.
Excellent. That's right. Absolutely right. Very good. Exactly. Situational syllabus as well as lexical syllabus. In fact, lexical syllabus coexisted with grammatical syllabus. They occurred at the same time, simultaneously. They were introduced almost at the same time. It means that, first of all, scholars started with grammatical syllabus types, believing that grammar is an important aspect of the language learning process learners need to master. But later on, some scholars like Anderson mentioned that grammar is important, but more important than grammar is vocabulary. He said that we all know that without grammar, little is understood. It means that if your learners don't have good grammatical knowledge of the language, at least they can communicate their ideas. Without correct grammar, they can communicate their ideas. They can express themselves. They can make themselves understood. A little bit of what they say is understood, even not perfectly. But he said that without lexical knowledge, without vocabulary, nothing is understood. It means that if your learners don't have any vocabulary in the new language, how could they express themselves even with faulty grammar? So it showed how important vocabulary was, and because of that, lexical syllabuses formed almost at the same time that we see the grammatical syllabuses uh, occur. They coexisted, as I said before. So, lexical syllabus, in which lists of vocabulary items are prepared, and students are supposed to master or memorize all these list of vocabulary items. And so mastery over the lexical item was the intention, and the purpose of the course is another example of the syllabus, which is product oriented in nature. And so is the situational syllabus. I will explain why after we have explained the features of grammatical syllabus and the functional notional syllabus. So let's start with the grammatical syllabus. What is a grammatical syllabus? And why is it called a product oriented syllabus?
Yes, picture.
Yes, sure, Zaina.
Grammatical syllabus, one in which syllabus index is selected and graded according to grammatical notion of simplicity and complexity.
Very good.
So the most repeated grammatical syllables introduce one item at a time and requires mastery of that item before moving on the other next to the next one. So it is
very good.
Involve mastering one item at a time.
Good. Thank you very much indeed, Zainab. So in this sense, as you mentioned, one grammatical item is presented at a time before moving on to the next, shows or reflects the features of a synthetic approach to syllabus design, as we have discussed earlier, that they believe that it needs to move in a step-by-step manner, and we need to focus our attention on making sure that the grammatical items selected and graded according to the grammatical notions of simplicity and complexity are perfectly mastered. If not, they won't move on to the next item. So this is the main feature of the grammatical syllabus, and we all know that in fact there is an assumption behind the grammatical syllabuses, and the assumption is that language consists of some finite set of rules which can be combined in various ways to make meaning. So that is why these finite set of rules are supposed to be selected and taught to the learners, so that with their knowledge of these finite number of rules, they can make an infinite number of sentences and express their meaning through various ways. All right, so this was the most important feature of the grammatical syllabus, as you mentioned, but there were some problems with the grammatical syllabuses of the time when they were first introduced into language teaching. What were the disadvantages or the main criticism leveled against grammatical? Can you say? First, let's start with the problems with the grammatical syllabus. What was the main difficulty, or what were the main difficulties that people encountered when they were designing their grammatical syllabus types.
You are now unmuted.
Yes, sure. Haydar Jawad, go ahead. You mean that focusing only on one discrete item, yes, was very difficult. That's right. Yes, that's right. That is called form function junction. We are going to talk about it later on as one of the major criticism which was made of grammatical syllabuses. Yes, but the difficulties that syllabus designers went through when they wanted to design grammatical syllabus definitely has something to do with the choice of the grammatical items, right? With selecting grammatical items. Their main concern was deciding which grammatical item was simpler than the other, and so
You are
designing
now unmuted.
these grammatical chains, as it was mentioned in the book, so that that's right. That's absolutely right. Experience has shown you this, and other people have also experienced this, saying that yes,
You are now muted.
designing the grammatical items in that come in a row, designing grammatical chains that are related to one another is very difficult.
Yes,
Ebtesam, yes,
yes, yes. We know the principal purpose of language teaching is to help learners to use the language and enable them to use it in genuine communicative outside the classroom. But in grammatical syllabus, the focus is on the one aspect, on the grammar forms. So it is not benefit for the learners.
Excellent. They had a simplistic attitude towards the nature of language. They
Yes,
equated language learning with learning the grammatical structures of the language. While for real communication, learners need more than simply grammar. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Ebtesam. Great. And Ofran says they did not reveal the true nature of language. Yes, that's why I say they had the simplistic attitude towards language, because they have just focused on one part of the language, which is grammar. They have ignored the other important parts that are equally important or even more important than itself. And yes, grammatical grading interferes with language acquisition, which is a more global phenomenon than a linear process. Sure, this is another major difficulty for people who have tried their hands in designing a grammatical syllabus. Grading the grammatical items is very difficult to do, and especially it doesn't have any logical explanation, because uh, language learning and language acquisition as a global or a holistic approach is much more complicated than as is represented by the grammatical syllabus to be a linear process. Um, yes, thank you, Gofran. Meaning of words is taught in isolation within a particular grammatical form. That's correct. And the transition from lesson to lesson is intended to enable material in one lesson. That's exactly this transition. They have emphasized on, moving in a step-by-step manner and linking all grammar to one another. Recite, go, written force, making sure that students still remember and have retained the previous grammatical item. All this is a tedious and a very laborious task to undertake. And yes, Ofran, this is the main criticism made of the grammatical syllabuses. This is called form-function disjunction. There is no one-to-one relationship between form and function. So, can you explain this form-function disjunction by providing some examples? And thank you, Haydar, for saying the main advantage of the structural grammatical syllabus are the following. The structures and vocabulary are the two most important elements of the language. Without good command of these sectors, no one can conceive of performing in all language successfully. That was exactly the reason why lexical and grammatical syllabuses were formed. They took shape in the first place. But they have ignored that these are not the only important elements of the language that play a great role in using the language in communication. There are lots of extra linguistic knowledge and skills needed to be able to put your knowledge into correct use. This is important, which was ignored by the grammatical. Back to what Ghofran mentioned about form-function disjunction. Let's see if you can show this form-function disjunction through some examples, please. Go ahead, please. If you want to explain this form-function disjunction or give us some examples, please do so. You see, Ghufran, you have mentioned here yourself that there is no one-to-one relationship between form and function. What does it mean? Can you explain it?
Yeah, sorry.
Mona, go on, please.
Syllabus design have been one.
I guess there's some bad internet connection because your voice is broken and
Yes,
glitched. Unfortunately, I cannot hear you properly.
Yes, doctor.
All right.
Yes, doctor. Can I add a comment?
Yes, sure.
Yes, doctor. There is no predetermined relationship between form and function. Not only can a single form release more than one function, but a function can be written by more than one form.
That is absolutely correct, Zainab. Thank you so much. This is exactly what is meant by form-function disjunction. That you see, there's one form of the language that you use, you include in your syllabus. Let's say you say, "It is hot in here. It is very cold in here." This is the sentence you use. So for this sentence, depending on the context, depending on the intention of the speaker, there are several different functions or purposes that can be realized simply through the form and the contextual information alongside this sentence. If I am in a classroom and I say this, I might mean to ask my students for help so that some of the students will get the doors open or the windows open so that fresh air comes in, rushes in, and the room is in here. This can be taken as a request, an indirect request for opening the windows and the doors to let the fresh air in. Or it might only simply act as a statement saying that it's very hot. You're reporting the reporting some information about today's weather. So it does not serve a purpose as to request someone to do something for you. It's just a statement you are expressing. You are giving information about the conditions of the weather condition that day. So you see, this is one form uh, serving two or three functions. The other way around, we have a number of different functions in English that can be realized in different forms. Take apologizing, for instance. When you want to apologize to someone, how many different ways of apologizing, making an apology, there are? Quite many, I'm really sorry. This is one way of apologizing someone. Then there are more formal ways of showing your apology to someone. Please
Rather tenuous.
accept my apologies. And so there are different forms that can be used for this particular function. This is called form function disjunction, which is quite problematic for the syllabus designers, mainly because it makes decision making really hard about which forms of the language to use and in which form of the language to ignore. Okay, so yes, another example Zainab has given here, which was mentioned in the book, is the cliffs are over there. So this can be both a direction, you're showing someone the direction towards the cliffs, or it can be a warning: beware, cliffs are over there. So you need to beware and take care. And Mona says the form function disjunction makes the process of syllabus design much more complex. That is the main problem, and that was why it was criticized. The grammatical syllabus was criticized. And up to some, the acquisition of grammatical structure will be determined by how difficult those items to process psycholinguistically rather than how simple or complex they are grammatically. This is another problem with the selection and grading of the grammatical items. Sometimes one form of the language which you find simple might be linguistically simple for the learners, but the same simple linguistic element might be psycholinguistically complicated and difficult for certain learners, not all learners. The example which was given in the book was related to the simple present tense. Even though this simple present tense seems to be a simple grammatical feature to learn, however, a lot of learners have difficulty understanding or remembering, retaining the information related to the addition of s singular to singular verbs in English. So it says that this linguistically looks simple, but psycholinguistically, students need to go through a lot of processes in their head to remember or to justify the use of s singular attached to the end of the verbs uh, for the third singular person. So this was an example that showed grammatical structures that which looks simple on the surface might be psycholinguistically difficult and complex for the learners. Very good, Abdesam. Thank you.
I reckon.
And Hidar says, for example, it may be suitable to teach verb times explicitly, but a structure such as the use of would in request and active in functional framework instead. Yes, exactly. Would is a very advanced type of grammar. But when you're teaching request, you cannot ignore or you cannot ignore the verb would, the use of would in request. So indeed to pay attention what elements you're choosing, what grammatical elements you're choosing, and in practice it would be really complicated and very very difficult to choose, because you cannot choose one simple form without relating it to other forms you want to teach in your course, and they sometimes become problematic. Yes, Mona, would you please say what you wanted to say? You raise your hand.
Yes, doctor. This reminds us by the popular sentence by the linguist Noam Chomsky. He said, "Caroline ideas sleep furiously." This sentence is grammatically correct, while is functional is incorrect semantically.
That's right. Thank you. This is the best example to show that it is not
I
just
reckon.
linguistic knowledge that learners need. Sociolinguistic knowledge, extra linguistic knowledge is also important for learning how languages work. This sentence, colorless ideas, would you please say that again? Colorless ideas?
Colorless green ideas sleep furiously.
Sleep furiously. Yes, exactly. So the sentence is grammatically correct. There is no grammatical error in this sentence. But is it meaningful? Does it make sense? Semantically, the sentence has got a lot of problems. Ideas, sentence, words that are included in this sentence are not relevant, are not related to each other. They do not complete each other to provide a sound meaning of the sentence. So, this sentence by Chomsky clearly shows how important it is to, uh, uh, you know, program, plan teaching of the language around, in addition to linguistic knowledge, some linguistic, pragmatic, strategic knowledge, and all types of knowledge that are considered as extra linguistic are also important. Okay, great job. Thank you so much. Yes, hey, that good. This sentence is grammatically correct. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously is grammatically correct, but it does not express any particular meaning. It is not semantically sound, semantically understandable, meaningful. All right. So that was the two main criticisms made of syllabus, and some, of course, uh, there were some SLA studies that also in fact, criticize the grammatical syllabus as well. Uh, Based on the studies in the second language acquisition, it was found that certain learners, have a natural order. Uh, there is a natural order of learning the grammatical structures of the language, regardless of the language you're learning. In all the languages of the world, there is this natural order that students learn about the grammatical features of the language. So they referred to it as the inbuilt syllabus. So they said that if learners have this inbuilt syllabus, then there is no point in selecting the grammatical items in a special order to be included in a syllabus, because learners will definitely through the process of language learning will find their own way and follow this natural order of the learning, or they will follow their inbuilt syllabus rather than the syllabus that we are preparing for them. This was another criticism which was made by SLA studies or SLA theoreticians of the grammatical syllabus. Okay, because of the criticisms leveled against or made of the grammatical syllabuses, they fell out of favor, and another type of syllabus, which was again product oriented in nature, but was an improvement over the grammatical syllabus emerged. It was called functional notional syllabus. But before we talk about the features of the functional notional syllabus, let's see if you understand the terms functions and notions. What functions and what notions refer to?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, function and notion. Yes, doctor. Functions may be described as the communicative purposes for which we use language. Meanwhile, notions are the conceptual meanings such as objects, entities, state of affairs, logical relationships, and so on, expressed through language.
That's right. Very good. So functions are the purposes for which we use the language, the communicative purposes for which we use the language to express ourselves, to convey our meaning. Like when we want to introduce ourselves, introducing is a function. When we want to apologize to someone, here apologizing is a function because it's a purpose for which we are using the language to apologize, to show someone that we are sorry. Or when you're requesting, when you are inviting, you're declining. These are different types of functions, which are the communicative purposes for which we use the language. But notions are those concepts or conceptual meanings which can only be expressed through language. So a lot of times, functions are complemented or completed by the notions. In order to understand some functions, we need some notions to also be included in alongside the functions. Like when you're talking about relationships, uh, so relationships, relationship or family or love are notions which can be expressed through the language, and they are closely related to certain functions of the language. When we are learning another language, it would be a good idea to learn about both of these concepts. Yes, so Haidar says notional functional syllabus contains a collection of the functions that are performed when language is used. It includes informing, agreeing, apologizing, requesting, promising, and so on. Anglo-Francis functions may be described as the communicative purposes for which we use language, while notions are the conceptual meanings like objects, entities, states of affairs, logical relationships, and so on expressed through language. And Haidar, notions of size, age, color, comparison, time, so on and so forth. Exactly. So that is the basis of the functional notional syllabus and the reason why notions were added to. Initially, it was only functional syllabus that came or emerged after the grammatical syllabus. But later on, they understood that functional syllabus cannot be complete if notions are taken away from it. So they added notions to the functional syllabus and they called it functional notional syllabus. Very good. Let's see the features. What are the features? Or let's talk about, so what is the point of departure? The point of departure in the grammatical syllabus, the starting point was selecting and grading grammatical notions based on their simplicity and complexity. What about the starting point in functional notional syllabus? Where does the syllabus designer start selecting? What things are selected? What is the starting point?
Yes, teacher.
Zainab, go on, please.
The starting point is by selecting items, by selecting the item, which items to include. The designer should decide which item to include in the syllables.
Zainab, yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly. There was some noise, uh, so in your voice. But I guess you said that the starting point is selecting functions and notions to be included in the syllabus. That's right. You see, in this sense, it is exactly like a grammatical syllabus, with the difference that in the grammatical syllabus, a list of grammatical items was selected and graded. Here, a list of functions and notions are selected and graded. So, again, this is product oriented in nature because not students do not learn about all functions that exist in English, but they tend to, or they are expected to master certain functions that are specified or specifically selected and graded for this course. They need to master them, and at the end of the instruction or at the end of the day, they should show their mastery over these functions. Simply, this is what is expected at the end of the course. Yes. Uh, Thank you, Haydar, for mentioning the situational syllabus, because the situational syllabus is also a kind of product oriented syllabus in which yes, situations or some real or imaginary situations are selected and included in a language lesson or language course to be learned. So here, situations are advantages over functions because they provide wider context. Certain functions are related to certain situations that students might encounter outside the classroom. These are definitely way better than functional notional syllabuses because they are providing some meaningful context in which these functions are used. But the same problem again exists here, and that is, not all situations that students might encounter in real life are included. It's impossible to do so. You cannot include all the situations, all the possible situations that the students might encounter in their real life in your lesson. So they are limited to certain situations which may be useful for some students, while they might not be in the list of the situations that some of the students in the class may encounter or may need to learn about because they have certain needs to perform under such special situations in their later future. Yes, that's right. Thank you so much. Now back to functional notional syllabus. Bits are counted for functional notional syllabus. Can you please tell me what the those 10 items listed here in the book, which show the advantages or the benefits of functional notional syllabus over the previous syllabus types? I forget because I have told the first group to do these mini projects for our next session. I want to make sure that I won't forget to tell you to ask you also to do it too. First of all, for the next week, based on the teaching situation parameters that you have described as the first step of your multiple step project, and you're supposed to send it to me by the representative of your groups today. So you should prepare a sample grammatical syllabus for this class that you have described in your first teaching parameter. In your grammatical syllabus, I expect you to at least you can include more grammatical items if you wish, but what I expect you to do is to include at least 5 grammatical items uh, based on the needs of the learners and show the order in which you will teach them in your syllabus and justify the reasons why you have selected these 5 grammatical features. from all the grammatical features available. The reason, what is the reason you have done so? So this is one of your tasks that I want you to do. And the second task is related to this functional syllabus, which is 23, I suppose, if I'm not mistaken, that comes after the list of the 10 items, or the list of 10 advantages or benefits which are counted for notional functional syllabus. The task wants you to choose 3 of the list mentioned here and express your reasons why based on these 3 reasons, you want to use a functional notional syllabus for your course. If you wanted to choose 3 benefits of the notional functional syllabus from the list here, the 10 item list, which 3 of them would be the main reasons why you use a functional notional syllabus? So you need to again explain and justify yourself for the selection of these 3 items from among the 10 provided in the book. So these are the 2 related mini tasks which you're supposed to complete for our next class. Now let's take a look at this list of 10 items. Can one of you read the book list there? And the benefits of the functional notional syllabus.
Yes, Doctor.
Go on, please. Yes.
Yes, the benefits adapting a functional notional orientation. The first benefit is that it sets realistic learning tasks. Second, it provides for the teaching of everyday real-world language. It leads us to emphasize receptive listening, reading activities before rushing learners into promote their performance. Four, it recognizes that the speaker must have a real purpose for speaking and something to talk about. 5, communication will be intrinsically motivating because it expresses basic communicative functions. 6, it enables teachers to explore science, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistic, linguistic, and educational principles. 7, it can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology. Enables a spare curriculum to be used with renowned grammatical, topical, and cultural material. 9, it allows for the development of flexible modular courses. 10, it provides for the widespread promotion of foreign language courses.
Yes, very good. The list was prepared by Finacchiaro and Bromfitt, 1983. So it counts the 10 reasons why, or the 10 benefits for the use of functional notional syllabus. So the task that follows this is task 32. It says, from your perspective, which 3 of the above reasons might prompt you to adopt a functional notional approach as it has been described? So you need to choose 3 of the above reasons to mention why they will trigger you, they will motivate you or prompt you to use a functional notional syllabus for your course. Which 3 of the reasons above can be convincing for you, to convince you to use the functional notional syllabus? Okay, so if we want to take a look at this list, the first one says that it sets realistic learning tasks. It says it's realistic because of the addition of the contextual element to the teaching of the language, some context. It goes beyond the sentence level, as was the case with the grammatical syllabus. Now here we see that more context is provided to the learners through the introduction of functions and notions. The second one says it provides for the teaching of everyday real-world language. So because of this, it's not an artificial, it's not produced or created language. It is mostly related to teaching everyday, real world language to the learners. This third one says it leads us to emphasize receptive activities before rushing learners into premature performance. It is somehow like first language acquisition when children start listening to the people, listening to the grown ups around them, and by listening to them they pick up a lot of ideas, a lot of language that whenever they are ready they can put them into use and express themselves. So in functional notional syllabus, emphasis is on receptive skills like listening and reading. The students just try to improve their comprehension first before rushing learners into performing or producing language prematurely when they are not ready for it. Number 4 says it recognizes that the speaker must have a real purpose for speaking and something to talk about. So this context can help them, have a purpose for communication. Number 5, communication will be intrinsically motivating because it expresses basic communicative functions. And this is quite clear that if something is not intrinsically motivating for learners, they won't want to take part in it. And number 6, it allows teachers to exploit sound, psycholinguistics, sociolinguistic, linguistic, and educational principles. So it pays attention to the shortcomings of the previous syllabus, which was ignoring psycholinguistic, sociolinguistic, and other educational principles. It only limited itself to linguistic issues. And number 7, it can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology. How it can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology? Can you guess what it means here? It can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology.
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, go ahead.
In developing functional notional syllables, designers need to look beyond linguistic notions of simplicity and difficulty when it comes to grade items. For example, the learners should know the structure of a sentence, for example, subject plus verb plus object, because if the learner didn't know the structure of the simple structure of the sentence, the function item becomes much more complex to him or her.
Yes, thank you so much. This could be one reason why they say it can develop naturally from the existing methodology. You say my voice is not clear? Yes, I sure. I will write it down in our WhatsApp group after the class is over, okay? After the lecture is over. Yeah, right? So when we say it can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology, it means that you don't have to be creative. You don't have to go to extremes in order to develop your own teaching methodology. The teaching methodology of the time, which was mostly repetition, drilling, practicing, memorizing dialogues, or conversations between two people, would be enough for the syllabus. You didn't have to, for instance, design certain tasks, because at that time task-based language teaching has not been at all. The idea has not been even there. So the existing teaching methodology was audiolingualism, and audiolingualism was enough for teaching functional notional syllabus, because through repetition, through drilling, through memorizing the functions and performing the functions, they did their best to help the learners master those functional and notional elements specified in the course. You get it now? So when we say it can develop naturally from existing teaching methodology, it makes reference to the existing methodology of the time, which was mostly audiolingualism. And number 7, 8, it enables a spiral curriculum to be used, which reintroduces grammatical, topical, and cultural material. So it would be very easy to create this spiral type of content in which you make, you actually go back and forth. You go to the grammatical items that students have mastered before, or the topics that they have mastered before, or the cultural materials that they have mastered before. You can reintroduce them, you can review them, and ensure that students can use their knowledge to engage in functions or teaching about the new functions selected in the lesson. And number 9, it allows for the development of flexible modular courses. Yes, because first of all, it goes beyond sentence level. It provides some context, and it's you're dealing with functions. So there are so many functions to be selected, and in that sense, the course seems to be flexible, and it can become modular because certain functions need to go with certain notions, and so sometimes not just one unit is enough, and you need to create or form modules for introducing the functions and notions in one particular module. And number 10, it provides for the widespread promotion of foreign language courses, which was the last reason, the benefit of promoting foreign language courses that were prevalent at that time during the 18th. That was a time when a lot of people from around the world wanted to find the best methods for teaching foreign languages to expand their communications with other people around the world, both economically and culturally. So this provided a good promotion of foreign language courses at that time, and this was considered as one of the benefits of the notional functional syllabus. So now one of your tasks or your job for next week would be to answer task 32 after this list on page 36, to say which one of the reasons above, 3 reasons above, might you choose to convince you or to motivate you to adopt a functional notional approach for your course. Okay, now the next part is criticizing functional notional syllabuses. Let's see why functional notional syllabuses were criticized. What were the main reasons why they fell out of favor? What was the problem with functional notional syllabus? After all, they were an improvement over the grammatical syllabuses. So let's see what problems or what criticism was made of functional notional syllabus.
Yes, Doctor.
Mona, go on, please.
Yes, syllabus planners find that when turning from structural-based syllabus design to the design of syllabuses based on functional notional criteria, the selection and the grading of items become much more complex. Also, the same problem with the grammatical and the product-oriented syllabus.
That's right. Very good, Mona. That's the main reason why they were criticized. You see, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our discussion today, especially when we started talking about functional notional syllabus, I said that what happened after grammatical syllabuses fell out of favor was that instead of a list of grammatical items, a list of functions and notions were specified to be taught to the learners. So we see that nothing has changed. Only a list of grammar is replaced by a list of functions and notions. But the way they approached language, that is ignoring the extra linguistic factors such as pragmatic knowledge or sociolinguistic knowledge, the psycholinguistic knowledge of the learners were ignored again in the functional notional syllabus. That was the first problem. The same criticism which was made of the grammatical syllabus, which was only a list that students needed to memorize and master, and so through about functions were specified. Were supposed to master these functions, and they were supposed to show mastery at the end of the instruction. So that was the main reason. The second one was what Mona mentioned. That is the design, selecting and grading functions was much more complicated and much more complex than selecting and grading grammatical structures. So grammatical structures at least are easier to, based on intuition, based on experience, are easier to decide which one is simpler and which one is more complex. But which function is more simpler than another function is really hard to decide. And it's very subjective and depends on the experience of the syllabus designer or the individual who is designing the syllabus. So it's quite subjective and very difficult to say which function is more complex than the other one, or which functions should be selected from among a lot of functions available to the learners to master and learn which functions should come first and why. So that was another problem, other criticism which was made of the functional notional syllabus. Anything else? I guess these were the main reasons, which were, the one which was mentioned by Mona, that in functional notional syllabuses, the syllabus designers needed to go beyond the linguistic notions of simplicity and difficulty, and especially when they wanted to grade them. And that was another main difficulty of the functional notional syllabuses. How you grade functional items is definitely much more complex than grading linguistic elements, and as I mentioned before, which function is simpler or is more needed or is more complex than the other one is a very difficult decision to make. And so, as we mentioned, again, the situational, contextual, and extra linguistic factors which are needed for the language learning process, especially in the grading and selecting of content, were also ignored, and they could not be taken into consideration in this type of syllabus. So that was the main reason why functional notional syllabus fell out of favor, and later on we see that some more process oriented, of course, after functional notional syllabus, another type of product oriented syllabus emerges, and that is situational syllabus. As we mentioned before, situational syllabus was an improvement over functional notional syllabus in that at least a general topic or a general situation was, or a context, a general context in which this function was used, was introduced to the syllabus, and it was easier to match. So it made selection and grading functions much easier for the syllabus designers, because when you have a particular situation, let's say at the airport, then it's easy. Procedural syllabus in that not all the situations that students, needed were included in the syllabus. A lot of the situations that the students were introduced to in the course were not very useful for the students and had no immediate uses for the learners. So, because of this, again, situational syllabus failed to attract enough attention from the scholars of the field, and it coincided with the time that more communicative approaches to language teaching began to emerge and affect language teaching. And language teaching, affected by this quite new approach, moved towards techniques and procedures that were most focused on real uses of the language, focusing on meaning, how communication can take place meaningfully when students engage themselves in meaningful tasks. So process-oriented syllabuses, in fact, began to emerge, which we will discuss next week. Today we don't have enough time to start the grammatical syllabuses. We will stop here. We have already talked about analytic syllabuses, that in analytic syllabuses, mostly students are supposed to be given chunks rather than separated linguistic elements of the language. And it emphasizes the experiences and also the processes, learning processes that learners go through, rather than the linguistic knowledge that they need or skills that they need to attain as the end result of instruction. We will see how analytic syllabus is represented in some models of such as content based. We will take a look at content based syllabus, which is analytic in its approach, and at the same time, it is regarded as process oriented syllabus later on in the next chapter. So let's leave it for our next week, and we will finish here. If comments, any questions, let me see your comments here. In developing functional notional syllabuses, designers also need to look beyond linguistic notions of thank you, Zainab, or Frances, deciding whether one particular function is either simpler or more difficult than another is difficult. Exactly, Gofran, thank you. And Haydar says, why terms notions come together with functional? Can we separate? Yes, I mentioned earlier, Haydar, that the first syllabuses that emerged after grammatical syllabus types were purely functional in nature. No, they were called functional syllabuses. In functional syllabuses, we only see some functions selected to be taught to the learners, like the Van Dyck provided a list of 100 functions that language learners may find themselves, may find useful when learning another language, and usually those 100 functions were included in books that focused on language teaching at that time, like East, West, and a lot of books that were used earlier for teaching English to language learners. Later on, they believed that functions alone are not complete. So, in order to help students communicate their thoughts and use language for the communicative purpose, they needed to talk about certain notions which were closely related to those functions. Because of that, since notions and concepts, either abstract or concrete ones, are parts and parcels of the language, without notions we cannot actually communicate anything around us. So they decided to uh, add notions to the functional syllabus and called it functional notional syllabus. That was the main reason. In that way, functional notional syllabuses seem to be much more comprehensive than the initial functional syllabuses of the time. That was the main reason it happened like that. You're most welcome. Okay. Yes, any other questions about the content of this chapter? Yes, Mona?
Yes, excuse me, Doctor. Concerning task 32, you mean only justify why this notional functional is beneficial for us? Only justification?
Look, Mona, I want you, there are 10 items in that list, right?
Yes, Doctor. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
You should, according to the task, you should choose 3 of them. That those 3 reasons are the main reasons why, as a teacher or as a syllabus designer, you want to use a functional notional approach. And you should justify, you should explain the reason why you have selected these 3 items rather than other items in the list. What are your main reasons for selecting those 3 items? What is so special about those items? That is what I want you to do.
Yes, thank you very much, dear Doctor.
Okay, great. Well, any other questions about today's topic? So your friends, Haydar and Ibtisam are writing, typing something. Let's see, and Zainab too. Let's see if they have any questions. All right. If you don't have any questions, let's call it a night then. And so let's say goodbye. See you next session. Take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Doctor. See you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Ibtisam.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Haydar, goodbye.